Hello everyone, thanks for tuning into Normal Day in Russia. One of the most interesting and atypical sectors, I would say, in Moscow is Moscow City, which is the place where I happen to be right now. The Moscow City district is basically a very small plot of land that houses all the biggest high-rises in Moscow. 6 of the 10 biggest high-rises in Europe are here, including the second tallest building in Europe, the Federation Tower. The reason I'm here today is, well, I've come here to pick up two fantastic phones, two of the best phones, I believe, of 2018, the Huawei Mate 20X and the Xiaomi Mi Mix 3. You know, we may be on the 85th floor, but it feels like we're at ground level because I don't see anything out the window. It's such a cloudy day today, low cloud. But you know what? There is a little tiny spot where you can see how high we are. Here, look. You don't see anything over here, but if you look down directly, oh, there's the city way below us. Now, hopefully while we're having our coffee and dessert, it'll clear up a little bit so I can show you guys Moscow, because usually from this point, you can see Moscow in its entirety, including the Kremlin, including Victory Park, and so on and so forth. Right now, all I see is the roof of the surrounding skyscrapers. Even though right now we don't have a view, I just want to say that I did get the phones that I was searching for. So here's the Mi Mix 3, but the great thing about it is that it isn't the Chinese version that everyone's been reviewing. This is the global version of the Mi Mix 3, so it's actually meant for international work, and it'll be easy to install all of Google's services and everything that you need to install like on any Android phone. And the same thing goes for the Huawei Mate 20X. This is also the global version, so you don't have to dance with a stick around it to try to get it to work with some crazy magic. Sadly, I couldn't catch any footage from that height, again, because it was incredibly cloudy. But I'll show you guys some of the footage that I shot earlier this year when I went to the same restaurant, just so you have an idea of how beautiful Moscow looks when you're looking at it from such a huge height. I think I'll set the Mi Mix aside because it's still sealed in an box, and we'll open it up second. Let's start with the Huawei Mate 20X. I haven't opened up this phone yet, and I haven't turned it on, and I purposely ignored any online reviews from large YouTubers, especially just because since this is a new ecosystem for me, a new interface, and a new smartphone company, I wanted to form my own opinion on the quality of this phone without any prior bias from things that I read or watched online. And the great thing about both of these models, both the Huawei Mate 20X and the Mi Mix 3, the ones that I bought in particular, are that they're the global variants. So these models, while made for the Asian market, nonetheless don't have any of the bloatware that comes on strictly Chinese phones, and they are Google capable out of the box. So you don't need to do any magic to get them to work. Have a downside though. They only come with 6 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigabytes of onboard memory. But that really isn't an issue for me. What's a lot more important is the fact that both of these phones are global. Now, I can see by some fingerprint smudges that this phone has already been touched, but they did say that I opened up at customs, so I guess they needed to look at the phone or something. But all the film is intact, so that's good. Now, right off the bat, one of the things that I like about this phone is the color. I have the dark blue color, the midnight blue. From the photos that I saw online, all the sales photos, it kind of looks like a much lighter blue color, sort of like this blue sticker over here. Whereas in real life, it is a very dark blue. It's a very nice, kind of regal, elegant color. I'm going to go ahead and take off these stickers at this point. So, okay, there we go. This is a very large device. It has a 7.2-inch OLED screen. Now, the resolution is lower than what you would get on the 20 Pro, but it is still a Full HD Plus screen, so the quality should still be very good. And what's important to me in comparison to the Mate 20 Pro is the fact that it doesn't have that huge, disgusting notch. Now, I know this is still an ongoing debate and definitely up for discussion on online forums, and all the reviewers have different opinions on this, but I hate notches. I just don't think that modern smartphones should have notches. It's really cheating. It's kind of a way to cheat, to try to say that you have a larger screen size, that you have a better screen-to-body ratio, whereas in reality, what's the point of getting a phone with theoretically such a large screen when the only usable surface area is a centimeter to each side? But I digress anyway. Here, let me pop this phone back out. Now, this is a very heavy phone. Here's a size comparison to a relatively well-known phone, to the S9 Plus. So this is a much larger phone. You get much more real estate on your screen. Weight-wise in your phone, it feels relatively the same. So if you're interested in that, there's no serious difference. So the bottom bezel on the screen of the 20X is a little bit smaller than what you have on the S9 Plus, whereas on top it's almost non-existent. The bezel is just about, I would say, I don't know, 3 millimeters thick. And then obviously you have that small circular notch at the top. Now, as far as specs are concerned, there are several things that I quite like about this phone. So one of the things that's great to me is the stereo speakers that actually fire side to side. So I love side-facing stereo speakers. I don't like the disbalance of having one speaker, especially when it's a mono speaker somewhere in the corner of your phone shooting sideways. Another thing that I quite like is the fact that it retains a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. Now that's a fantastic thing, and kudos to Samsung. I want to say, thank you to the company for both retaining its water resistance to whatever degree it still has, and including the 3.5 millimeter jack. Here's another discussion online that I just don't understand. There's so many devices that use the 3.5 millimeter jack, so many accessories that use it. There is no need to put additional adapters into the phone. There's no need to require you to use additional dongles for something that doesn't take up that much extra space, but adds so much functionality to your device. Two reasons right off the bat that I don't like the 20 Pro are actually three: the smaller screen, the bigger notch, and the lack of a 3.5 millimeter jack. So it has Huawei's own Kirin 980 7nm chipset. There is something about the processor that I don't like, that I know already ahead of time, is that it doesn't allow me to shoot 4K 60 FPS, which I've gotten very used to. I'm a little bit spoiled. I love the video quality on my Samsung S9, even though I don't much like the photos that it takes. So I'll be missing the 4K 60 FPS. But then again, I've been using my DJI Osmo a lot more nowadays anyway, so I think I'm going to be using this camera more as a still shooter than as a video smartphone. This is going to be an interesting process for me because I haven't set up a phone from companies other than Samsung in so many years. Alright, so there was a lot of skipping to do. Okay, wow. Very bright colors, very nice display. I wonder what the nits are on here. Now the thing is that even though this has a lower resolution than the 20 Pro and then the S9 Plus as well as the Note 9, on all of the aforementioned phones, at least on the Samsung phones, most users have a lower resolution out of the box anyway. A lot of users don't know that you have to go into the settings and change it from its default lower resolution to a higher one. And if you do that, you're going to run through your battery much quicker. So I've been, even though I've been using my S9 for a long while, I've also stuck to the default setting. I have a lower screen resolution just because it allows me to keep my battery going for longer. And really, I mean, I'd like to go pixel peeping, but the display is great. I don't see anything that I would consider an artifact or a visible pixel. The icons just look incredibly crisp and incredibly bright. This does not feel like a downgrade in terms of resolution from my S9 Plus. This feels like it actually feels like a better screen because it's larger and it's more encompassing. So I think I'm going to quite enjoy playing around with this phone. Now, as for the back, it's not a smooth glass back. It has these sort of very small micro ridges. So there's a very slight sort of roughness to it, kind of like a high-grade gaming mousepad, something like that. Now, one of the great things about this phone that I'm really looking forward to testing is the camera. So it has triple cameras, and I'm not a fan of multiple cameras on a phone. I would much rather have a single camera with a large aperture that's capable of taking the shots that I need. But in the case of this phone, I think it's excusable because the secondary cameras are here probably more as a marketing ploy than anything else. I'm interested in the main shooter, which is a 40 megapixel f1.8 aperture camera, and the fact that it's supposed to be a very nice camera coupled with Huawei's AI assistant software is supposed to lead to very high quality photos. It does have optical image stabilization, and the most important thing I'm looking forward to is testing Huawei's night mode. So all the biggest manufacturers are now releasing some form of a night mode on their phone. The Google Pixel 3 supposedly has the best night mode, although that's up for subjective comparison. The Mi Mix 3 also has a night mode, and the newer Samsung devices are allegedly going to come with night modes as well. What else do we have in the box? All right, so inside of this packaging, we have a clear, oh, that popped out. We have a clear silicone case. I love that companies are now including silicone cases for their phones inside of the box. It's just so great that you can buy your phone and have the peace of mind that it's already protected, at least basically protected from the elements. Now, this is something that was started by Chinese companies, as far as I'm aware. I believe Xiaomi was the first company to begin including cases for their phones actually in the box. Kudos to everybody that does this. You guys are doing the right thing, especially considering the fact that smartphone prices are going up like crazy. Even in the case of this Huawei Mate 20X. So this phone it cost me $900, which is quite a bit for a smartphone. But then again, you're getting quite a bit of a smartphone. This is really tablet territory. 7.2 inches. This is baseline, a borderline small tablet, and this is going to be great for using as a GPS device in my car and all around for looking at photos, watching videos. I think I'm really going to enjoy this very large and high quality screen. Now, besides the case, you also get some basic instructions, a warranty card, which obviously isn't filled out in my case, and then you get this pretty nifty little charger with Huawei's supercharged technology. It's 5 volts, 2 amps, or at 5 volts, 4.5 amps. Now, this brings me to another detail about the phone, which is very great. It's very attractive to me. This has a very large battery, 5,000 milliampere hours. That's fantastic in and of itself, but it also has very great fast charging times. Now, this is going to fast charge slower than the 20 Pro, which I think has a 40-watt charger, but it still has very respectable charging times. And what's great about the Huawei is that they usually grab whatever charge is available to them, regardless of what device you plug them into. So if you plug them into your PC, into their proprietary charger, into a charger from another phone manufacturer, you're going to get the maximum power output from that charger or from that other device, which is great. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a USB-C cable, which has a nifty little purple color to it. Look at that. And then obviously you get a typical pair of headphones that look very similar to what you used to get with an iPhone. Since this is the global version, this only has 6 gigs of RAM, whereas the Chinese version also has an 8 gigabyte variant. And as far as onboard memory, you could get 128 gigabytes or 256, but with the global version, you're stuck with 128 gigs. On the other hand, this is a dual SIM device, and the second SIM slot can also be used as a expandable storage bay, but it can only be used with Huawei's own NM storage cards, which I don't know if they're even available for sale yet. As far as accessories for the phone are concerned, you can also buy Huawei's own Smart Pen, which is an analog of the S Pen that you get with Note devices. And I think I'm probably going to end up buying that in the long run because I used to love my S Pen. It's a bummer that you can't plug it anywhere into the phone or maybe magnetically attach it, so I'm going to be carrying it around separately. Well, we'll figure that out as we go. This phone also doesn't have 3D face unlocking like the big brother or the small brother, the 20 Pro. The 20 Pro has an IP68 rating, whereas this is only dust and splash resistant. Nonetheless, a very interesting phone. It has a fingerprint scanner on the back in lieu of the in-screen scanner on the 20 Pro. All right, so with the Mi Mix 3, the same thing is true as with the Huawei Mate 20X. So this is the global variant of the phone, which is a little bit more difficult to come by. There are a lot of Chinese phones floating around everywhere, in Russia at least. I'm not sure about in Europe and in the US. So this is marginally more expensive than the base variant of the Chinese version. And the downside to it is that it only comes in one configuration, the 6 gig RAM, 128 gig ROM version, whereas obviously the Chinese version of this phone comes in 6 or 8 gigabyte RAM versions, and now there's a new Forbidden City variant with 10 gigabytes of RAM. So whether or not that's overkill is up to you. And unlike the Huawei Mate 20X, its memory is not expandable. So this is a dual SIM device, but you cannot pop a memory card in here, which is strange and it's regrettable. In my case, I find that 64 gigs is not enough space for a smartphone, especially if you're shooting video in 4K. Whereas 128 gigabytes is the sweet spot. It's more than enough to where I can go on vacation, I can take a lot of videos, I can take a lot of photos, and not worry about running out of space. And then when I am getting closer to full, and once everything is uploaded to the cloud or downloaded to my PC, I can just delete the older photos to avoid duplicates. So 128 gigs seems like enough, although obviously it would have been better if they allowed us to buy a global variant with 8 gigabytes of RAM and at least 256 gigs of onboard memory. But what can you do? In any case, I'm very happy to have the global version. I don't want to jump through hoops to install ROMs on a phone I'm not familiar with, on an operating system, or an overlay at least that I'm not familiar with. Samsung phones are pretty easy to work with. I've flashed them a million times, all the phones that I've had over the years, so I'm used to it. But I haven't really fiddled around with Xiaomi phones, and I don't really want to. When you have the opportunity to buy the global version right off the bat, I don't really see the need to waste your time buying a Chinese version and then having to mess with its software. While I'm opening this up, let's talk about specs. So this has as far as the processor is concerned, it has a Snapdragon 845 processor. So similar to what you have in all the high-end phones this last year. And it has dual 12 megapixel cameras on the back, of which received very, very nice reviews from DxOMark. It's amongst the best phones this year. It has a 6.4 inch. It has a 6.4 inch Full HD Plus display. The resolution is the same as what you would get on the Huawei Mate 20X, but that is stretched out quite a bit more. 6.39 inches to be exact, whereas over there we have 7.2 inches. Now the color that I have is very nice. I have this beautiful beautiful blue porcelain color. What's their official name for it? Let's see. Sapphire blue. The color is so beautiful. So this seems to be a ceramic backing, and it has full edge-to-edge glass. All right, I'm gonna enjoy peeling the screen protector off. In this case, we have the same story as with the Huawei Mate 20X, whereas we have a slightly bigger chin on the bottom and just absolutely no bezel at the top. Size-wise, when you compare it with my S9 Plus, these phones are pretty much identical. The Mi Mix 3 seems to be maybe a millimeter wider and about a millimeter or 2 millimeters thicker. But what I've been waiting to do since I've heard about this phone is this. Wow. That's so weird. That just feels very strange. It's almost unnatural. All right, I'm leaving fingerprints all over my screen, so I need to wipe down my hands. One of the things that I don't like about this material, although it's beautiful, I have to say that it's a gorgeous material, but oh, it's such a fingerprint magnet. I mean, I've washed my hands several times leading up to the filming of this segment. I've only held it in my hands for maybe a minute or so, and it just looks like I've been using it for several days and don't care about looking after it at all. Yeah, I don't like that, but it's going to be in a case anyway, so that's not going to be a major issue. Alright, so I'm back. I had to stop to wipe down the phone because it was just attracting so many fingerprints. I guess my fingers got a little bit oily. Some of the things that I don't like about this phone, some of the specs that are less than fantastic, is the fact that, one, it has absolutely no IP rating, so it's not tested for an IP rating. But the general rule of thumb for devices that open up or have hinge mechanisms and things like that is you don't want them to be in contact with the water. That's more of a kind of peace of mind aspect, the water protection I mean, than something that you should be testing on a regular basis. Another thing that I don't like, again, is the non-expandable storage and the 3.5 millimeter jack. As you can see here, it's nowhere to be found. There is no jack on this device. And unlike the Huawei Mate 20X, this phone does not have side-firing stereo speakers. Also very interested in seeing how MIUI has developed over these past few years, because I haven't used it again since the Mi Max 2. So I'm interested in if I'll be able to pick this up and not feel a little bit, lost in the ecosystem. I've read all the privacy policies. Does anybody actually read these policies? I don't think they do. Now, whereas the Huawei Mate 20X comes with Android Pie 9.0 out of the box, the Mi Mix 3 comes with Android 8.1 still. Another downside of this phone is the battery. Obviously, it's not removable like in all these major high-end phones, but in this case it's very small. So the Huawei 20X has a 5,000 milliampere hour battery, whereas this phone only has 3,850 milliampere hours. It's not a little battery by any means, it's just that I would want some more juice in a phone with a screen this big. Especially considering the fact that this phone is allowed to break barriers. I mean, it's a slider phone, it's a slider slab. So they could have done more than just a slider. They could have made this phone thick for once in a while. So you add some girth to it, you could have put in a larger battery, and you could have kept the 3.5 millimeter jack. I don't see the need to remove it when the phone isn't waterproof. Why remove it? Well, besides for thickness. In this particular case, it is very thin. So when you slide the screen down, the remaining part that you have is actually too thin to fit in a 3.5 millimeter jack. It is very small. I'm interested in checking out this camera. Both the front camera is supposed to be very nice and the rear camera. It also has AI scene detection, just like all these newer phones seem to be doing. This is the direction that most phones are going in nowadays. So it's interesting to see how it's going to play out and how it's going to affect phones with smaller cameras, for example. I really like this screen. This is the first phone I've had that resembles to being bezel-less. It does feel all-encompassing, and again, this is a matter of personal preference, but the fact that it has a flat screen, that it doesn't have curved edges, is a major plus for me. It's a major win for me because all of this screen is usable surface area. I don't need the curvature. You want your phone to look nice. You want the design to be attractive, but a smartphone is, in my, again, particular experience, a smartphone is something that has to be functional over looking good. Jumping to this camera from my Galaxy S9, the front camera instantly looks like a much more high quality unit. Let's set aside the phone for now. We'll come back to it in a second and see what else is inside of the box. Okay, so this is all just one piece. Okay, so I can finally read what it says in this little insert because all the photos of the Mi Mix 3 that I've seen have had this in Chinese. So it says, on the road of exploration, we will constantly invest, constantly strive, and constantly break through. We are willing to devote an additional 100%, even if we only improve by 1%. Be friends with our users, be the coolest company in the hearts of our users. So that's a nice quote to live by for a company. And this is cool. This phone is something that's worth having for the cool factor alone, but if you add into it the fact that it has an amazing screen, a beautiful screen, it truly is bezel-less, or at least it feels as close to bezel-less as possible. It has, as far as professionals have reviewed, a very high quality camera, so it has the cool factor. It has this sliding mechanism that just makes it so out of the norm. I wish more manufacturers would do something like this. Not necessarily a slider, but just something that's out of the norm. All phones have become so similar, it's so hard to justify jumping to a new phone. It's so hard to justify spending another $1,000 on a new device. So as much as this may be a gimmick, I've seen much worse gimmicks over the years. I can see this being a true major selling point in one generation for a device. So why did I buy the Huawei Mi Mix 3? I bought it for the cool factor. I bought it for the slider, I'll be honest. But I'm loving the screen, I'm loving how the bezels look, and I believe that I'm going to love the camera, although that's left to be discovered in the coming days. Yet another fantastic thing about this phone is the kit that you get. So inside of the box, you don't have to do any shopping. You get this wireless charger, which is just so fantastic. Just as with the Huawei 20X, you get a silicone case. Again, thank you, Xiaomi, for starting this trend. Actually, this isn't a silicone case. This is a thin plastic case with a silicone covering. And it matches the color of the phone as well, which is a nice touch. Has this perfect matte cover, and you can take a look at the camera right now. It's not leaving anything behind. This is interesting. So there's a cutout in the case at the bottom of the phone for your screen to slide. Whereas at the top of the phone, when you open it up, there's a lip. They didn't make the same kind of cutout over there. So I'm not really sure what to say about that besides the fact that it's just interesting. And as far as the rest of the gear that you get something that I don't like at all. Not the fact that they include it. I'm happy that they include it, but why do you do this? Smartphone companies, what's with the dongles? I don't want to have 20 dongles in my phone. So you're telling me that if I want to listen to music, I have to plug this in. I have to plug this into my phone and then plug my headphones in here. What if I want to charge the phone? I'm supposed to put it down on the wireless charger and use it like that? What if I'm watching a YouTube video? What if I'm not just listening to music? I don't know. It really limits the functionality of the phone. Obviously, down the line, there's going to be some sort of dongle where you combine power and audio out, but it's so pointless. And while you do have a free wireless charging unit in the kit, and while you also have this USB-C to 3.5 millimeter jack dongle in the kit, what you don't have is a pair of headphones. So that's a minus for this phone. I haven't really spent much time getting deep into the intrinsic parts of the user interface overlays that both Huawei and Xiaomi have added to their phones. But generally speaking, for somebody that's been locked into one smartphone manufacturer's ecosystem for several years, again, Samsung in my case, I really don't see any issues with getting used to the overlay here. Everything's very easy to understand, so I think this isn't going to take much time to get used to at all. They're both very snappy. There's no delay. There's no lag in switching between screens. There's no delay in turning on your apps and closing them. Although for some reason, I think it's just the animations. I think the animations in the Huawei are faster. The MIUI interface seems a little bit slower by comparison. Although it doesn't seem laggy, it looks and it feels slower. But that's a first impression, and I could be wrong about that. Otherwise, both of these phones feel incredibly solid. They're very heavy. They feel very well built. There's no bend or give in this sliding screen. Feels very solid. It doesn't make noise. The same thing can be said about the Huawei Mate 20X. It'll definitely pass any normal bend test that you could possibly apply to it. The only thing that I really have to test to find out if these phones are up to the hype that's been surrounding them is the cameras, and I'll definitely do that at a later date. But as far as first impressions are concerned, these phones are fantastic, and the Huawei 20X is exactly the bigger screen upgrade that I've been looking for to my S9 Plus. This is really by first impression, this is really the phone that I've been looking for and the phone I want to use. This phone actually has a screen protector on it out of the box, which is very nice also. Thank you, Huawei. That's going to come in handy. Very bright screens, very interesting devices. They both definitely have a cool factor. In this case, the cool factor would be the large screen, the tiny notch, the large screen, the tiny notch, and the very interesting camera with its fantastic night mode. And in the case of the Mi Mix 3, it would be the sliding mechanism as well as the price point, because the Mi Mix 3 is quite a bit cheaper than the Mate 20X. So this phone I bought for just a little bit over $600, whereas the Mate 20X cost, like I said before, about $900. So much cheaper. You're getting a high-spec device at that price point. You're getting the Snapdragon 845, just like every other flagship phone that's gotten very high marks from reviewers all over the web. And you're getting a kit with your phone that doesn't leave much to be desired, with the exception of maybe headphones, which, again, would have been nice if they were included. But otherwise, both very solid phones. And if you've been looking at these phones online, if you're wondering if you should buy them, if you switch over to them, you've got to really consider if it's worth upgrading to a new phone at all, because, I mean, they're just all so similar. They're very similar. But if you want, if you think it's time for an upgrade, if you really feel that it's time to splurge on a new phone, these phones are very cool. These phones feel new. These phones feel innovative. Especially in the case of the Mi Mix 3, it feels like something very original. You know, for the first time in a long time, it feels like I have a device that's atypical. Oh, and that's cool. The bottom of the screen, I just noticed that it has little ridges on it over here, so that's fun. That's a fun little touch that they added as well. This is an exciting phone for me. This is something that I would enjoy using as a daily driver. And the same can be said about the Huawei Mate 20X. If you've been eyeing these phones, maybe you've been comparing these two models, or maybe you're already interested in the Huawei Mate 20X since you're watching this video, or the Mi Mix 3. If you're looking at solely at this phone and comparing it to the Mate 20 Pro, with the exception of the higher IP rating of the Mate 20 Pro, I think this is the overall better phone. This has all the same functionality. It's just as good in every way. Plus, you have the benefit of not having a huge, disgusting notch at the top of your phone. You have a much bigger screen, so that means more real estate for you, more space to work. If you're a power user, or even if you just like watching videos and looking at photos, this is going to be a much better option for you. Again, that's my subjective opinion, so take it for what it is, but this is a very great phone, and I think I'm going to enjoy using this as a daily driver. However, a major downside is the fact that it doesn't shoot 4K 60 FPS, because all the flagship smartphones nowadays are doing it, and this is not. So if you don't have a camera that you use on a daily basis for whatever it is you need to shoot, then this could be a deal breaker for you, and then you should be looking at phones that have a Snapdragon processor and not the Kirin 980, because the same is true for all of the Mate 20 series. They all shoot 4K 30 frames per second. As far as the Mi Mix is concerned, modern day smartphones and marketing is all about gimmicks. Every single new phone has one gimmick or another. And this is not a perfect device. This has its downsides, namely the lack of a 3.5 millimeter jack. I know many of you have gotten used to it, but this phone has such a cool factor to it that it really compensates that. It compensates the low IP rating. It compensates the fact that it doesn't have expandable storage, and it's so different. If you're going to be walking around with this phone, I think this is going to be a conversation piece for you if that's something that you're interested in. This is definitely something you're going to be discussing with your friends and showing off when you first get it. It's brazen, it's so atypical to do something like this with a flagship smartphone, and I'm really happy that Xiaomi decided to do it. That alone is enough of a reason to buy this phone and to support Xiaomi, and to show them, hey, you know what, take risks. We appreciate the fact that you're taking risks, and this is a very solid overall phone with all of its specs. It's very solid. So I think that this is going to be a great device also to use on a daily basis. And like I said, if you're interested in this at all, then Xiaomi is the obvious route to take. It has all the same power user specs at a much lower price, plus the cool factor. So in choosing between these two phones, in my particular case, for my daily driver, I'm going to go with the Mate 20X, but that's given the fact that for video, I use my Osmo Pocket, so I don't really need to shoot video on my phone. I need more screen real estate, so for me, this is going to be my daily driver. The Mi Mix 3, however, is going to go to my wife because it shoots 4K 60p, and it's just a smaller phone. It's a little bit more of a dainty phone, although, again, if I didn't have the option to buy the Mate 20X, if this phone didn't exist right now, of all the other phones in the market, I would choose the Mi Mix 3 as my daily driver phone. I'll probably install the normal slew of apps that I put on my new phones, and then maybe have a review up in a couple of weeks after I've really gotten to know these phones. But for now, all I can say is that these are both really great devices, and if you choose to go with one of these, if you choose to get one of these phones going into the new year, I think you'll be very happy. And I'm actually looking forward. I'm extremely looking forward to jumping into this device and just starting to learn all of its ins and outs, and adapting to the new interface. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Happy New Year to all of you, and I hope to see you sometime soon in the new year with some new videos and some new ideas.